Yeah, we will go back. So the neglecting family, there are just frequent clues to the child that they're not that important, they're not very valuable, mom just is busy with her stuff, so the child just feels invisible. The other part is that a child can't see that it's his environment, not him, that's dysfunctional. If like that little child in the grocery store where he's calling mom, 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 and she's just not even answering, she's busy doing her thing, she's ignoring him. What that says is there must be something wrong with me because I can't even get my mom's attention, so I'm invaluable. So often a child in that situation would say, if only I was a better kid. If I was a better kid, my mom would not ignore me. If I was better at what I did, then I would get attention from my dad. But there's so much busyness, and our society's built to be busy. Everyone is busy doing their own thing. I mean, a lot of it is all really good. I'm not putting down some of these activities we do. But when we become so busy that our kids feel invisible, that's when we've got a problem. Problem is, these are all under the heading of shame-based families. What the child feels is that they're not good enough, so the shame is going to overwhelm them because they don't feel that they matter. The other part of that is that they feel like a non-person, like a non-entity. They don't need to exist. And this comes in, and I'm not knocking large families, but this comes very much in large families. One of my very best friends has a family with 9 siblings in it, and she said she was the neglected child. Well, they were all neglected children. They've all grown up with dysfunction because mom and dad, how can you have that many kids and do it well? I mean, there are families that do it well. But with 9 kids, if mom and dad are so busy doing their thing and just kind of, how can you give that individual attention to 9 or 10 or 12 kids? Back in the old day, everybody had 15, 20 kids. So it makes you wonder, how many of those kids grew up feeling like they really mattered. Of course, that's a generational thing, so can't really talk about that.
And my dad was one of 18.
18 kids. Okay, so how did he feel as part of the family? Did he have a lot of self-esteem? Did he feel like he was important in the family?
Well, a couple things. I mean, his dad, if his dad came in the front door, my dad went out the back door. So his older siblings spoke well of his dad.
Okay.
He never had a conversation with his dad, not once.
So he was a younger one?
Yes.
So
yes,
the
he was
dad was probably
third from the end. Yeah. So he was number 15, I believe.
So of course dad was busy doing his thing, and
so he had
by the
more
time
siblings interaction, way more.
Yeah. And he probably has a father figure in one of his older siblings, possibly.
Yeah. It's amazing that he's as decent a person as
yeah.
he is. I mean,
Yeah.
Because his stories are horrendous.
Yeah.
Abuse from his dad or whatever. Very, very fearful.
Yeah.
When his dad died when he was 12, it was a good day.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so just very strange.
Yes.
But it's amazing. You hear some of the stories.
Yeah.
That was during wartime in Holland. So.
Right. And there was a
crazy
lot of
days.
big families, but there also weren't as many distractions for moms. Mom's job was to be in the home and taking care of the kids. So they, in a lot of ways, were able to meet their kids' needs a little better. Now we've got all our careers and everything else. Not saying anything bad about it, but it was a very different time back then.
Yeah, I do wonder, going through this, sometimes I think about my dad a lot. I think, how is he as good a person? Right?
Yeah.
It's funny, sometimes somebody can go through a lot and be okay, and
for sure.
Anyway,
at some point he got on the right path and decided that those kind of things were giving him what he needed, and off he went.
His mother must have been praying for him.
No,
yeah, that's right. Yes.
Number 15 out of 8.
Number 50, wow.
Wow.
And his mother must have prayed for him a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they had a Catholic family.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So, does anybody see their family in their family of origin as being a neglecting family? Can you see some of those feelings of not mattering very much, being neglected, kind of being not that important? Anybody relate to that at all? Yeah.
My mom left me at this grocery store when I was 2 in the cart and was halfway home, and then I thought, where's Jeanette? And like, I thought you got there.
Yeah.
I was just sitting there like.
I've done that too. I can't complain of your mom. I've done it too. I had 3 kids, bang, bang, bang. I left her little sister at church once and went home. I forgot I had a third.
That's happened to my
It
husband. only kid at the time.
Yeah.
Oh, you were okay when they should have but it was in the 70s.
It was in the
Oh,
Wow.
We did it with one of our kids.
Yeah.
We had
Happens. We get busy.
You get a treat and stuff, so it's okay.
Wow. Alright, now we're going to talk briefly about the controlling family. In the controlling family, one or both of the parents are very authoritarian, rigid, and meddlesome. They control every decision that's made. I'm a product of one of those families. My dad was the king, and we were the peons. Deviation from any of the family rules or family dynamics, any deviation of that is a bad thing. You're not allowed. That is, anything is squashed. It has to be dad's way or no way, dad or mom. They're very controlling. The strange thing about the controlling family is that there are hundreds of unspoken rules that you don't really realize until you break the rule, and then you're brought back in line from various means. I remember when we were going to a big Christian church, we got spanked every Sunday afternoon when we got home because we were either talking or fidgeting or doing or whatever. And I remember being at about 6 years of age and going, okay, when I'm in church, I have to focus. I didn't understand a lot of what the pastor was saying, but I had to focus on what was there, and I couldn't talk to anybody beside me because I knew at that point, at 6 years of age, I'd get a spanking when I got home if I did something or if I talked to somebody. So that causes a lot of complex trauma because I didn't know all the rules until I broke them. And I would do anything to avoid being spanked at that age because, you know, it's terrifying. So grew up very, very afraid of my dad, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of breaking those unspoken rules because you just don't know what they are. You can anticipate what they are, but that causes a whole new level of fear. Okay, can I do this? I don't know. I'm going to get spanked when I get home. You know, all that kind of stuff. So it makes for really, really fearful children. It's not fun. And so what happens when there's all these unspoken rules is that the child learns to put on the masks, and we're going to talk about that later in class. We're going to put on all the masks because we know what we're expected to do. By the time we're spanked for every little thing, we know, okay, we have to do it this way, we have to act this way, we have to smile, we have to always be happy, happy, happy. So we put on all these masks. And the problem is we become disconnected with our own selves. We don't know who we really are, what our likes are, our needs are, our wants. We just can't because it has to be done a certain way. The other part of that is that parents will put their wishes and desires on their children, their dreams, the dad needs to have a hockey player in the family, and so they're putting all their wishes and dreams on the child. Problem is that the child can't find what they really like. They don't like playing hockey, but they know they have to because dad wants that. And so they can't realize their own dreams. They can't go out and be who they want to be because they know it's expected that I have to do what I'm supposed to. Just for an example, my son-in-law, he's really, really brilliant. And as he was going through school, he was just high marks in absolutely everything in the sciences and the math. So his dad, who's very image-bound, said, okay, I know what we're going to do with you, Donovan. You are going to be a doctor. So all through, by the time he remembered saying, by the time he was 12, he knew that his dad had said he's going to be a doctor. So he did. He went on, and by the time he graduated from university with a degree in microbiology, he knew that that's what his dad wanted him to do. And then he found my daughter, and they got married. And she started to say, you don't have to do what your dad's telling you to do. You can have your own, that healthy view of what are your gifts and your interests and stuff. So he became a brewmaster at a brewery. And he is so happy because now he is the head brewmaster of a brand new big brewery in Calgary and loving every minute of it. But his dad is so mad at him because he wanted that, that little chuck in his, or what's they say, a chuck in the belt. I have a doctor for son, he wanted that so desperately. But luckily, he got out from under that controlling family and was able to do what he really loves. Another long story with that, but I won't go that far. So the parents can't tolerate any variation on the rules, and children have little choice for self-fulfillment. They just have to do what mom and dad say that they're going to do. Then we've got the enmeshed family. Is it enmeshed? Yeah. Enmeshed. Now, in the enmeshed family, there are really fuzzy, unclear boundaries. There seems to be mom, just for example, a mom is looking to the children to get her emotional needs met, and that's not a healthy thing because kids can't deal with grown-up issues and things that are going on between mom and dad. So those boundaries are just really fuzzy. There's no one there to say, that's not appropriate for someone your age. That's not appropriate for girls and the brother and sister to be bathing together at 8 or sleeping together. Just the funny things that we hear a lot of enmeshed families where they just don't feel like they have any rights. It feels wrong to them. A lot of the things feel wrong. I've got a client back home whose 20-year-old son is still sleeping in a single bed with her. She's a single mom, and she put all her needs and wants onto him, and I've tried to talk to her, and she's like, oh no, he likes it, it's all good, we're all fine. And there's nothing weird going on, I believe that, but she just needed that emotional support. And so the son thought that was very normal. Wait till he goes into university. Yeah, creepy, right? I know.
That's weird.
Yeah, but try and tell her that,
Yeah.
and she doesn't get it. Yeah, she was a single mom, only child, and that she thought that it was very sweet and kind of her son to crawl into bed with her. What a little creepy.
Yeah. Would this be like, were you in a family where you have parents that are trying to be their kid's best friend?
Oh yeah, that part too, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, that happens a lot. Because especially when there's divorce or separation, each of the parents are trying to be the buddy, the best friend, the one that gets all the love and attention from the kids. And that can be really awkward because then they start to make those boundaries, like you say, the boundaries start to get fuzzy. And so the kids don't know if we're a buddy or if you're my parent, and they're just really, really afraid to enforce the rules. Yeah, very good example. That is totally an enmeshed family. The other part of an enmeshed family is that awareness doesn't really come from within, it comes from what the environment is like. So if mom is happy, okay, that means I can feel happy and I go off and do my thing. If dad's angry, okay, I'm angry too. Whatever you're angry about, I need to pick that up and I gotta be angry too. If somebody is depressed, well, we're all very quiet and we do our thing. So it becomes like one person's emotions and one person's needs and wants. All the family kind of pick up on it all, and everybody kind of moves as one.
Is that the same where one of the other father are talking about spouse to the children? all
Like
the time?
negative?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're trying to get, the
Yeah.
child on their side. Yeah, that would be totally.
They actually call that emotional incest.
Yeah.
Because it's,
You're getting those needs met.
it's sharing emotionally with a kid that you should not be crossing that boundary with.
The other part of a enmeshed family is that a child doesn't grow up and they don't know who they are. And I've kind of explained my situation growing up as well. We did everything together as a family. We were a great family on the outside. We played games every night. We went places together. We were so enmeshed though that if somebody said, well, how are you doing today, Kim? I'd say, well, I don't know, let me check the temperature of the room and see how we're all doing. I didn't know who I was. I didn't have any of my, wasn't able to identify my needs. I didn't know what my wants were. We were always as a group. And when I was growing up, I thought that was great. I love my mom and dad, and we always do things together. But when I became my own person, I realized that that was kind of a sick environment because it was enmeshed. All our needs were all together in one. And then the other part is that a child doesn't have a sense of personal power, so they don't feel that they can give their opinions because their opinions are their parents. They don't feel that they can talk about what's going on in the family because that would hurt our whole families. You know, we were all together in one. Anybody can relate to that one? A little bit? Okay.
Yeah, controlling.
Yes, yeah, the controlling one, right? That was easier back in the day. Yeah. And the abusive family. So the abusive family is aggressive, it's attacking, the child feels damaged and unfit to live a good life. They feel worthless as part of the abuse. So there can be the emotional, and we've talked a little bit about this in some of the other areas. Any child that's ridiculed for, wetting their pants when they're 5, they're humiliated, there's extreme punishments, they're spanked aggressively and in a very unhealthy way. They're being put down all the time, they're being told they're not good enough. And then the sarcasm, which we've talked about, that's really emotional abuse. You're making the child, again, we're talking about shame-based families. Children come out of emotional abuse really, really shamed that the mistakes that they made are horrible mistakes and they should never have done it as a child. And so they come out feeling like they really don't have a lot of value. There's the physical abuse. So that's the inappropriate spankings, smacking the kid as they're walking by. That's really, really abusive. Threatening to spank them more if they misbehave, like we got on the way to church. If you misbehave, you get spanked at home, and we got spanked every single Sunday. We talk about it now, and of course my dad, oh, you're kidding, that's crazy. But we all of us older 3 kids, we knew it. Every Sunday for years we got spanked until we were completely in line and we never did anything wrong. We were the perfect kids growing up.
Did you ever kind of associate church with spanking?
Yes.
I don't want to go to church because I'm
Yes.
going to get spanked.
Absolutely, it was kind of fearful, and that didn't last for very long, but for those few years, we did not want to go. We'd pretend to be sick and, all those kind of things that children do, so they didn't have to go, because we knew there was a spanking at home. Yeah, absolutely, and so you can even put that into spiritual abuse, right? Because God's going to get you, you did something wrong, you're supposed to be these perfect, quiet little children at church. And there were, again, 3 of us under 2 years of age. Can you imagine how hard that was? It was really difficult. So some of the other things are that people will withhold food for children, go to bed without supper. Yeah, you got that lots? Yeah. So again, I was an early childhood educator. We were not allowed to do that. A kid could be misbehaving horribly, but at snack time they were allowed to come. And because I didn't like the fact that I had to kind of pretend there wasn't anything wrong, I found that really difficult. But you can't do it. You can't withhold food from anybody, or sleep, or any of those deprivation things. You can't. Another thing that we've heard quite a little bit with our clients is that they were asked to do really demanding tasks when they were little. So a 5-year-old sent outside to rake up the leaves on a one acre property. Like, that's absolutely unheard of, but that was a punishment to them. They said, if dad, smacked them going by and said, all right, go out and do something, and they would make them do really hard physical labor so that they would never do that bad thing again. But that is physically abusive. A young child who's not physically able to handle that, if they are forced to do that, that's devastating. Very, very hard. And then sexual abuse is the worst. It has the deepest wound, the sexual abuse. One of the problems with that is that a whole family could be the enablers of the abuser and pretend that it didn't happen, or ignore that it happened, or downplay that it happened. And so a whole family could go into that place where maybe the child was asking for it, that kind of horrible thing that happens. And that does happen a lot, because back in the day, and of course I'm talking back in, that was never talked about. Sexual abuse was never talked about. So if anything horrible happened like that, it was swept under the carpet and you never ever spoke of it again. So a child who's been sexually abused, of course, they're filled with shame because they're it was a secret, of course, and you never were allowed to talk about it. But what that says to the child is that there was something wrong with them, and they're not allowed to say anything. So that can be really, really, really hard. So they have to carry the secrets for the family, pretend that these things didn't happen. They can be blamed for what happened to them, or ignored if the truth is ever revealed. Happens a lot. Children can feel violated and yet feel that they were flawed or deserving of the abuse. So unless a family will take a child who's been sexually abused and really work with them and affirm that it wasn't their fault. I mean, there's ways to, not every child who's sexually abused will go into that extreme thing. But if it's a shame-based family where all those things are hidden and not talked about, other people are blamed for it, that's when a child has a whole lot of complex trauma. Any comments on any of those four? Okay, we're going to go right into another one. All right, we're going to talk about the roles in the families. And again, these are shame-based families. So in shame-based families, there's always a role that a child plays in order to stay safe. Number one is the hero. That's the child who's the perfect child, never does anything wrong. They get validated and positive attention from their parents. They're just a perfect child. So they often become overachievers, over-responsible for lots of things. They take on a whole lot of things because that's their role. They have to be the perfect child. But the thing is that the hero feels like maybe they can fix the problems of the family by being the hero. If I can be great at all these things, then maybe some of that other stuff will go away. And I won't feel, the rest of the family won't feel shame if I'm a really good person. So they take on a lot of responsibility to make the family better. When a parent has a hero in their child, they feel really good about it because they're like, see, we must be really good at this parenting thing because look, we have a hero. He's an overachiever. He does all the right things. So it makes the parents feel better and not willing to look at their own sources of complex trauma because look, that proves that we're doing a good job. We must be really good parents. So they excel in everything, but a hero will often live with a whole lot of inadequacy and insecurity because they feel that they can't heal the family's pain. Okay, so as adults, they become perfectionists, people pleasers, and workaholics. So they become very much like the family members. They're rigid and controlling, extremely judgmental of others because, well, if I can do all these overachieving things, why can't you? So they're very judgmental if somebody doesn't match up to the perfect child that they were. They have a really hard time with their own children if they're not high achievers and heroes. They're very driven and compulsive. They just have to jump in and fix everybody else's problems because they are the fixer and the hero. They feel they have to keep this image up. They have to be the hero the rest of their lives because they can't be honest with their own stuff because then they'll fall off their pedestal. They have to stay up there. And they have a fear of falling off the pedestal. It's fearful. They spend a lot of energy trying to make sure that they do everything right because to fall off the pedestal would devastate them because that's their role. It's been their role since they can remember. So to fall off that will just devastate everything that they know about themselves. So they also feel responsible for everybody else. They're going to go in and just make sure everybody's okay, that everybody's doing well. But they have no awareness of their own needs because it's now a part of that enmeshed family. I have no needs because my needs are taking care of everybody else and making sure that everybody's happy and they're all looking up to me as being their hero. That's the hero. Any comments on that? Anyone relate?
And then I got hurt because I was just working so much.
Yeah.
everything just fell apart.
Fell apart, yeah.
Like, crushed.
Yeah. Hard to live with, right? The second person is the scapegoat. And I talk a lot about the three of us, my siblings and I, twin sister, older brother, less than 2 years, we were all one little big group. But I seldom talk about a little brother who was born 6 years later. We call him the oopsie. I know, we were really bad back then. He became the scapegoat because he watched all the three older siblings overachieving, overdoing everything. They were perfect children. And then he came along and he couldn't relate to anybody and he couldn't match up. He wasn't as smart, he wasn't as, energetic. And so he became our scapegoat. A scapegoat acts out all the family's anger. They find a way, I can't be perfect, so I'm gonna be the bad one. I'm gonna work out all this anger, I'm gonna be blamed for all the family's problems. The family is often ashamed of them because they have the hero who's perfect and then they have the scapegoat. So all the problems must be it's usually a younger child. The younger child, all our problems are because that younger child became the scapegoat and started making bad decisions. So all the problems can be taken off what we're doing, the complex trauma we're causing. We're gonna just put it all on this younger child because that makes us less culpable of some of the stuff that's going on. So this poor scapegoat, he's often the most sensitive child, and he's hurt that the hero is always getting all the attention. He's hurt and he's wounded, he's feeling invisible. So the only way he knows how to get attention is to act out and do the bad things. So, unfortunately, it works, right? So you got the hero over here who's doing all these great things and the parents are praising them. The scapegoat can't do what the other one is doing, so he starts doing bad things, and of course the parents swoop in to try and fix him, right? It's like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you be like your brother? They think they're encouraging them to be better, but it's actually making it worse, because the child knows that they can't be the hero. So they become they can go into, they want to break all the family's rules. That's kind of what they want to do. That can often lead into ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, because if mom and dad say, we're going to do this, I'm going to do the exact opposite. I'm going to break all the rules to make sure that they know that something is wrong in this family. Which leads to, the scapegoat is usually the most emotionally honest. They know the family's not working. They know there's complex trauma. They know that there's stuff going on that just doesn't feel right. They know that growing up. But they're not willing to act like everything's okay with the family like the hero was. The hero's going to make sure everybody knows this is the perfect family. He knows it's not, and he's unwilling to go there and pretend that it is. Yes?
Being the hero, like the hero for a while, and then just out of
Sure.
because there's no acknowledgement of all the strategies and everything to just turn.
Yeah, once a hero, not always a hero. You can slip into all the different roles. Is that you? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm thinking
No?
of my sister. She
Oh,
was
your
like
sister.
Brilliant. She's
Yeah.
literally like on
Yeah.
the list of even more or some club, I don't know.
Mensa?
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, who needs to know that, but you know what I mean? Right? And then, she just out of being just not acknowledged at all and
Right.
just even, and so she tried so hard, but then I could see the switch
Yeah.
when she went to high school, that was it.
Yeah.
Gonna be that girl, and
Yeah.
she did it up good.
Yeah, she did it good. Yes.
So, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes
But
it
now
depends on
she's
the
turned
day.
back into the hero again.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like in 0 to 60,
Yeah.
went back to school in 5 minutes, got her MBA. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That kind of thing, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
What were you gonna say, Kat?
I said, I think sometimes it depends on the day.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, how you're feeling that day. So the one other thing that the family does is to pile all the bad things on the kid and say that's the reason why our family's all messed up, because this child is acting out and we're giving all our resources to make them better and sending them to all these programs and whatever, and it's not working. So we can pile all our problems on the child and say that it's his fault, that everything's going poorly. So, as adults, they're gonna grow up and they're gonna have addictions, trouble with the law, promiscuity, and they always live with a chip on the shoulder because they weren't validated for all the stuff that they knew was wrong in the family. They were just told that they're bad and off they go. Anybody relate to that one? All right, then we go to the lost child. The lost child feels invisible. The lost child feels like an outsider. They feel like they're ignored. They seek the privacy of their own company because they want that rich fantasy life. Just, I'm gonna go into a place where I can pretend that everything's perfect and I can live in that little dreamland, little fantasy world. They read lots of books, they watch lots of TV, internet, video games. All these devices fill that void. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of live in a different world where I don't have to look at what's going on in my family. They deal with reality by withdrawing. And the problem is that from the parents' point of view, they're praising the hero, they're putting all this stuff on the scapegoat, and they ignore the lost child because they don't cause any problems. Here's our little lost child over here. She was a lost child. Because we had the little one, the little sister who talked all the time and had to talk all the time and got tons of attention. The older one was the scapegoat. He was actually the one that was going to do everything wrong because he did not like the way the family was going. And rightly so, he had a right to do that. So she kind of became the lost child. She was the perfect child. We didn't worry about her. We thought she was going to be great. And then she hit her late teens and all blew up everywhere. But she learned how not to be a lost child by expressing herself. And when, again, and I've said this before, once the parents start getting healthy, they perk up and notice right away and they will accept you with open arms because you're working on getting better. So this lost child, they want to be noticed, but they're afraid to be noticed. They can't express their feelings. They don't want to talk about their opinions, but they are very, very lonely. So they grow up feeling very lonely. So, these poor lost children, as adults, they're terrified of intimacy because they haven't had that with their parents growing up. They've made a wall around themselves, so they're terrified of intimacy, and they may isolate themselves in social settings. They don't know what to do in those, going to friends' places or church events or all the things that are going on. They don't know how to act because they very much live by themselves in a little corner somewhere. So they can't trust people because they don't feel were able to trust their parents. They didn't know what to do with them. They're a little bit indecisive and socially withdrawn. So that is the lost child. Anybody relate to that one? Yes.
The lost child is actually my third son. So,
Okay.
and he was diagnosed with autism.
Ah, another factor. Yes.
So do you think that's part of that? Or, because, I mean, in birth order, the three sons are 1, 2, 3.
Okay, right.
So, and there's complex child obviously within the family.
Right.
So,
I don't know enough about that. Can you answer that
Well,
question?
what do you mean, like how do you tie those two together, the lost child and all?
just all these behaviors. All these behaviors, like he didn't speak. He was into video games. He was playing video games at 18 months on the computer. You got up at night, turn them on and play them, or things like that.
Not sure how to answer that.
It was just
Yeah,
interesting.
it's interesting that autism, spectrum of autism, has a lot of these characteristics.
Well, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's wonderful now, but he still struggles as an adult with the social stuff.
Okay, sure.
And he has a mask where he knows how to manage himself publicly and
Right.
he can. be
He's
an usher.
learned. He's
He'd be
learned
the usher in the
behaviors.
church and he'll know everybody's name who ever came in.
Yeah,
you know.
really.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Just interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one. That's a good one. Autism. All right. Number 4 is the mascot or the clown.
mustache. Yeah, you got a mustache.
I find this very funny because my older brother, my older brother, his nickname all through school and everything else was Bozo the Clown. So guess where he fit into the role? He was the clown. And what he thought was, if I can make people laugh all the time, then we don't have to look at all the bad stuff underneath. He was a master at being the clown. So he took responsibility for the feelings and of all the family members. He was going to make sure everybody was happy and jovial. We were laughing all the time. Everything was great and funny. If anything came along that was a negative, of course, he would jump up and do something silly. And we would all laugh and forget all our troubles. That's the way I grew up. I thought that was normal. So he's diverting everyone's attention away from the real issues. And I remember being in teenagerhood where some stuff was going on in my family, and at the dinner table, it was always very kind of scary because some things were happening and people were starting to say negative things, and my brother always had a way to make us not even talk about that. We couldn't even focus on that because he was doing all the fun things. So the other part of the clown mascot is they're hyperactive and they love to be the center of attention. Now, we heard that going to all these Christian camps that we went to growing up, is that as soon as they saw my brother's name and his best friend Dozo, so it was Bozo and Dozo, you can imagine what that was like. As soon as they saw their names on the roster for camp, they all went, oh no, what are they gonna do? I mean, they'd steal the bell, the great big bell off the roof. I mean, they were doing, funny. I think it's pretty funny, but I happen to have married the son of the director of the camps. Tim's dad was the director of the camp, so I heard afterwards how they're like, oh, no, not, I won't say his name, not that guy and his buddy. They're going to camp this week, and oh, we gotta batten down the hatches, make sure everything's gotta be tied down. Yeah, so he was I saw him as being a lot of fun. I wanted to be like him, but it just wasn't that funny. But he made sure everything was really funny and everything was great. But he often hides his pain with humor and feels very fearful and inadequate. So he is now in his late 50s, and he still can't have a deep conversation. He doesn't know how. I've seen him, we go back, we start talking about things. As soon as the room starts to talk about something a little deeper, you can see his face gets physically, not frightened, but just detached. He's going to totally detach from all his feelings, and then he eventually leaves the room because he can't deal with anything like that. So he, of course, is divorced, and relationships don't work out because he doesn't know how to have a healthy relationship, because you can't laugh your way through life. So he's a lot of fun. He's a lot of fun, but he's got a lot of issues.
You think of those celebrities that.
Oh, yes.
Taken their life.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Because it's you get a lot of attention for it, but for being the funny guy, I always said that if there was one thing about my life I would change, I would wish I was witty. I'm not witty. 2 hours later, I remember something funny I could have said, but I'm not witty. I always emulated my brother. I thought I wanted to be like him. But then as I saw him growing into teenage years and he couldn't cope, he didn't know how to deal with feelings, I knew that wasn't the best thing. So as adults, they resist facing problems. They avoid them at all costs. They have to be funny. They also become followers and never truly grow up. So they're also hard to take seriously because they don't really have an opinion on anything. So those are our 4 roles in the family. Does anybody want to make a comment on that? Anything that you saw yourself as?
I saw myself as part of 1, part of 2,
Yes.
part of 3.
Yes, absolutely. Little
And maybe
pieces.
even
Yeah.
a little bit of 4.
Yeah, and you can change back and forth.
People laugh at their.
Yeah.
I definitely think, sorry. Yeah, like the lost child, I was always, kind of down, never, I remember I actually really was in another part there, just being invisible.
Right.
All the time feeling, calling out my dad saying,
Yes.
daddy, and I still remember that,
Right.
never once answered.
Wow,
Never.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember crying one time, I was all grown up, my mom had just passed away, and my mom, I was going to Like my dad took me out to McDonald's with the kids, and I came home, and all of a sudden I was just like weeping uncontrollably. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? It's the first time my dad had ever actually sat down, taken me out and talked to me across the table. So it was really like that, and I didn't even know that until I got home, and I thought, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same. So Donna, all four of them I can see.
Little pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very common too.
I wanted to be number 4. But it just didn't happen. My sister had
Yes.
me beat there. But I was a 7-year-old making dinner for the family.
Wow.
So I know I was number 1 and number 3.
And number 3, the lost child, right?
But I had to be number 1 because it was kind of one way that I was keeping my father at bay
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
by being responsible, because that's what he wanted, because he was the authoritarian.
Yes, yes.
And he was in university and my mom was working full-time.
Okay.
So somebody had to do it, and my
Yeah.
sister was too busy goofing off.
Yes, being the clown. And she had way more fun than you
Well, she
do.
was 6, I
Right.
mean, you know.
Yeah. 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 Funny. Anyone else?
Sure, I could be mostly the scapegoat, but also identify with the lost child. And
Okay.
and if necessary, I could be the clown.
Okay, yeah,
So just different masks, I guess.
Yeah. for different situations.
Different situations,
Yeah.
would act in different ways with different people,
With different people, yes.
different social groups and settings. Not just within, I think it's asking roles within the family unit, right?
Right.
But how also did I behave in the social network at school?
Right.
What was I there, with my peers? I think it all results is from coming from the family unit, but it's all ways that I acted out in my life to maybe disengage from what was going on
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I'm finding with a lot of the stuff that I've been doing this year. Like so much of my childhood, like there's stuff that I disassociated from, so it's hard for me. I can identify with this stuff intellectually, but I can't. I'm having some trouble going. It's weird.
It's weird.
Right now.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break.
Oh, like my whole world has changed.
We just had one of those. Hope we could have been gone.
Well, that's fine.
Just finished.
The vision remains the same.
We're getting together on Saturday to see where, some of the forward and things. Cross seasons.
9 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
Hopefully get ours on that.
If you're coming like boss, pick up the skyscraper.
Yeah, I was thinking, it seems like every winter, we get like 2 or 3 months.
No, I mean,
Whole regiment, still gets sent.
like 5,000 a day.
Still have outside so I can see Lori.
Nothing, I'm in.
You have my number? This chicken Caesar salad.
Do that. Jeff, AKA.
Oh, it's like, like right here. Oh, okay, I'll bring that.
Do you come by Skype?
Yeah, I do.
There's such a different crowd.
And that's when I where I was like, do you know what? Ask somebody if you want
That's
to
another
take
good-
their spot, because there's no, like, I just kind of off it. I probably should have been working on this.
Yeah, maybe.
You should have sent me home.
It's
no mood.
After I dipped my dead weight. Oh,
Sorry, I got
did
those.
said it once.
I don't drink coffee, but anyways, welcome to it.
Oh, really?
Alright.
He doesn't care. He wants coffee. He needs coffee. Take as many as you want.
Anyways, I'm getting it on anymore.
Organic.
What do we call these? Dopamine salts?
Once I start.
Well, now I can have marijuana. And these go over very well, but I think we could have a new thing here.
Marijuana gummy bears.
Power of the mullet.
Yes, it's true.
When we see
Dopamine's
people
going
on the
all over.
street, can we hand these out?
I bet, yeah.
They don't run to their dealers because they go to Pops, I'm serious.
All right, let's get going. So we talked about the shame-based families. Those are families that have all this complex trauma, and so the children try to find roles so that they can avoid the shame and kind of put it down so that they don't have to feel the shame all the time. We're gonna just quickly talk about all the different results of shame. So what happens when you've been raised in that kind of a family where you grew up feeling that you weren't worthwhile, you didn't have any value? And the first thing is that you feel flawed. You feel that there's something wrong with you, you're damaged, and you just don't belong. The second thing that happens is low self-esteem. They have a hard time feeling good about themselves. So think about what happens if somebody says something nice to you. What are some of the things that go off in your head? So somebody says, boy, I really like what you're wearing today. You look really pretty today. So what things would go through your mind?
What do you want?
What do you want? That's a big one. What do you want? Anything else?
Yeah, I would deflect it and say, oh, this old thing?
Yes, yes.
I
You
got
didn't.
it for 10 cents.
Yeah, tell them.
Oh, you're a
Yes, yes. Or you didn't really mean that. You know, they had to say something nice, or they felt they had to.
It feels uncomfortable.
It feels uncomfortable. Yeah, yeah.
Fishing for a compliment?
Fishing for a compliment. Yeah, yeah. And there was one more, I think. Oh, if you really knew me, you wouldn't say that. Okay, so I feel so much shame that it's like, you know, if you know who I was, then you wouldn't say I looked pretty. So low self-esteem, it's all over the place. So, the other thing that happens is we can become an offender or a victim. An offender seeks revenge and power because they had none growing up, and a victim often seeks sympathy. So they go into that victim mode, and we talked about that the
Or
other day.
self-pity.
Self-pity, yeah, yeah. Do both? Yeah, oh, sure, sure.
What was the word you used, revenge or?
Seeks revenge or, I think I said power.
Power.
Did I say power? Yeah, yeah, it's written down there.
It's written down here.
No, okay, it is actually.
Yeah. The other thing that happens is that they have difficulty in relationships. So fear, because there's all that shame, we're afraid to get into a relationship, because if we get into a relationship with somebody, they're going to find out about the real me and find out who I really am, and I have all this shame that it's not going to work. So I have to put up all these walls and make sure nobody can find out who I'm really like. because I have so much shame underneath. Depression. So I have a deep sense of loss of self. So a child who grows up in a normal, healthy family, they grow up with self-esteem, they are encouraged along different ways. They're told that they're a good person, that they've got lots of value, that mom and dad care about you no matter what you do, unconditional love. So if a child is raised in shame, they've never had that. So obviously they tell themselves that they don't have any value, and they've never learned how to grieve that. I remember the moment when I came across when I learned that it was okay to be angry, that my family wasn't perfect. I remember the moment, because I never really was aware that I was allowed to be angry about anything to anybody. And all of a sudden, when we were starting to do some counseling and talking through some stuff, I went, well, you know, my family was pretty good, but maybe it wasn't perfect. And somebody said to me, that's really sad that your family wasn't a perfect family and you didn't get self-esteem. And I went, it's okay to be angry about that? And I remember that moment because it was like a weight off my shoulders. I don't have to pretend anymore that everything was perfect. It was a really hard thing for me to accept. So if you're living in that environment where you feel like you can't say anything negative, you can't be angry about it, then depression sets in. Because I can't be real, I can't have my true self coming out. And I won't allow myself to be angry.